Hello, it's me, your friendly neighbourhood game designer, Tony Boydell, and I'm going to be putting together a very quick run-through of alubari, a nice cup of tea. And you can see here it's all sort of laid out in front of me, and there's the prototype box, and yeah, ignore that. That's an end of work day refreshment. So let's first take a look at how the board is laid out. Now, for those of you that have played Snowdonia, a lot of this will be familiar, and you'll only have a few extra rules to learn, particularly around the idea of the chai. But it plays slightly heavier than Snowdonia, and the chai kind of runs through everything. So the first thing is, you've kind of got two tracks. You've got the railway track, which needs steel bars, as it would do in something like Snowdonia, or the tea gardens, which is where all the rubble is now. And the idea is that you don't need to excavate the railway anymore, you just lay the track. Here you need to dig away the rubble in order to get yourselves tea gardens, and you put your marker in when you take the last cube out of a space, and they all number from between 3 and 12 cubes in a space. These cylinders are 5 rubble pieces. You put your marker in, and whenever there's a harvest of tea, you will be getting tea equal to how well the crop has grown, which is this bottom track here, multiplied by the number of tea gardens that you've got a marker in. So if you have 3 markers and the rate is 2 on the harvest track, you'll get 6 tea leaves. Tea leaves are worth half a point each at the end of the game, but obviously you don't want to be getting half a point each for tea leaves at the end of the game. You want to be using them for much better things, and I'll come to that in a bit. So those are the tea gardens. Now those aren't the only ones. This one's set up for a 3-player game, so it stops here, but obviously we need more cards, and there are more cards. And they're double-sided, so they're all representing real tea estates in the area, the Darjeeling and Himalaya area. And they all have different values for how many bits of soil need to go on first. So you'd set these up randomly. If you're feeling benevolent, then you can use the one that's pre-printed on the board. So this is a 333 rubble space, which is usually very easy to get dug out, and people with tea gardens right from the very off. Because over here, where you'd normally see the work rate for digging and laying track, there's also the crop growing track. You'll see that the starting values are a little bit more generous in alubari. It starts off at 3 excavation. So if you go to the excavation space in the first turn, first round of the game, you're going to be getting one of these puppies, which is good for later in the game. Although, of course, you can win the game without dealing with the tea. It's one of those important game designy type things. Shouldn't be a mandatory thing that you'd have to go for a tea garden. Anyway, so there we go. Those are the 3 tracks. You'll see it goes from 2 to 5 instead of 2 to 4. These little bits at the end, these are the enforced harvests of tea. So if we ever get such good weather that it bounces off the end, it'll bounce back to number 5 and we'll get a tea harvest immediately. If the weather is so good for growing tea, which won't surprise you, if it's raining a lot, then this marker goes up, and if it ever gets to the end because it's moved up because of the weather, then it triggers a harvest, and then everybody gets tea based on the current rate, and then it resets back down to this one here. There's the tea house. That's where your 3rd worker lives. There is no surveyor in this game. Just don't need one. These guys work really hard, and they work really hard because they like to drink chai. Now this track over here is the chai track, and we all start with 0 chai. Chai comes out of the bag when you do the stockyard at the beginning of each round, so it would be up here, and it's what replaces coal basically. Chai taken from here increases your presence on the track, and then the chai from the bag goes out of the game. You can also get chai from trains. Well, they're not actually trains, they're called equipment, because they're not just trains. There are elephants, there's warehouses, and in some of the promos there are chai wallahs and chai boilers and all sorts of other bits and pieces as well. There's even Davis the elephant from Heavy Cardboard. So, yes, yeah, what was I talking about again? I've forgotten that. Chai, that's right, chai. So there is chai to start with in the bag, but it will deplete, so you'll have to get chai during the game by using tea. That's correct. Take the tea leaves that you've harvested, and you can take them to the chai wallah, and he will either give you tea or he will turn the tea you give him into chai, which you record on this track. So why do I keep going on about chai? Because tea leaves are very useful. You can build station spaces in Siliguri town by spending tea leaves. Remember, tea leaves are half a point normally, so these are extremely lucrative ways of spending your tea. Siliguri never gets closed by an event, by the way. It's completely open for the entire game. Chai is used on the actions. So you have your kind of familiar actions already. You've got your stockyard, which if you know Snowdonia, you'll be familiar with this. Get resources. You've got your digging space, excavation, and that allows you to sort out your tea gardens. This is the foundry where you can convert stuff. You can convert your stone into rubble, or your rubble into stone, or you can convert iron ore into steel bars. It has this stone into rubble because quite a lot of the stations are made up of spaces that need rubble. Here we go. Because these are very quickly built buildings. These aren't finely dressed stone buildings in most cases. Laying of track. Again, you don't need to excavate the track anymore. You just play it and pay it and down it goes. Then you have the build space. This is where build a train, an equipment piece, or you can build a space in a town. Now the towns are special in this game. They're not cards, and you don't need to build the railway between them necessarily. What you need to do is to open up towns. You need to lay the track in one of these spaces. These are water obstacles. They tend to be bridges that need to be built. Then once you've built in those spaces, it opens up all of the towns up to the next obstacle space for building in. So once this one here is done, you can build in any of these three spaces. Okay, so that's building. Contract cards, as per normal. Here you go. They're upside down. So you've got the effect that you can use once during the game, and then you've got the bonus at the end of the game. You can see here that these also need tea as part of their criterion. So 2 tea leaves at the end of the game you can get 5 points for. So that's still better than half each. 2 tea and 1 track laid gets you 11 points. It's the same old, but they're obviously different effects because they're all to do with tea and chai and the Darjeeling Railway. And then finally we have the chai wallow, who I've already talked about. Now these are all great actions, but the chai is this bit on the bottom here. This takes your basic action and it supercharges it. This means you can have some fantastically big turns. Take 2 extra resources. Dig an extra 3 bits of rubble. Have an infinite number of actions at the foundry, and it costs you 2 iron ore for a steel bar instead of 3. This is a great space if you want to build a lot of track for some of the meaty track bonus cards. This is lay 2 track above the current work rate. So we have seen happy workers building 4 pieces of track with 1 worker if you give him a bit of chai. The build space lets you do an extra build if you pay chai, so you can build 2 things instead of 1. You could build a train and then a building, or 2 buildings, or 2 trains. This is really important. You can have as many trains as you like, as long as you can pay the upkeep, because the event track is a rondelle here. It's a circle. Starts here and it goes round and round and round and round and round. Obviously it triggers events like the growing of crops and harvests, but it also has train maintenance, which you can pay chai or steel bars for. And the problem is, of course, if this goes around multiple times, you've got a lot of trains, it's going to cost you a lot of steel bars and chai. But they're all worth points at the end of the game, so that's really, really good. So one strategy, buy lots of trains, buy lots of equipment. And then this one is shuffle the 3 things away from the line, deal 3 new ones out and pick one. So you can actually refresh that contract card line to try and dig in for the thing that you want. So basic actions as you'd expect, and then you've got these supercharged actions as well. Just close that off there, right. What else can we show you on here? I mean, that's basically it. It's beautiful bits of artwork. You can see each town has got its own sort of thematic piece there. Agony Point, which loops over itself in reality. There are some fun effects in the buildings here. If you build 4 stone into Gayabari, you get a contract card. So you can basically steal a contract card in the E action before somebody wants to pick it up in the office action there. You can build trains and equipment really cheap by building in Rangtong, for instance. Pay 1 steel bar and you can pick any of the equipments that you want. Doesn't matter what the cost is. You can build the 2 cost ones for 1 steel bar, like the Garrett D class. There we go. So that's alubari, and it works pretty much the same way that Snowdonia does, because it was originally designed as a Snowdonia expansion. But adding the tea and adding all the effects to make the tea work made it a much bigger game, a game that was too big to be a simple expansion. That's it. I hope that's enough until we get some proper well-shot videos. In the meantime, I am going to have a lovely drink of wine. Merlot.